Hello and welcome back to Anglesey for day 2 of the Arrow Pack Euro Saloons and Sports Car Championship. For race 1 yesterday we had bright sunny skies, but the coastal weather has taken a turn for the worse and the drivers and teams now face a very stiff challenge.
With just 15 minutes to go until the race, the drivers have to make a late decision on tyre choice and the setup of their suspension. It's dry now, but rain is scheduled to arrive within the next half hour.
If it rains in the middle of the race, we're in real trouble on slicks, but I think most people are going for slicks, so got to go with the majority, really.
If it does rain, will you enjoy that? Do you like driving in the wet?
I do, but when I'm on wet tyres, not too keen wet on slick tyres. It makes it a bit of a handful, so because it's getting heat into the rears and things like that. So yeah.
The changeable coastal weather often provides a stiff test for the drivers and teams at Anglesey, but it's not the only challenge. The circuit itself demands precision and bravery in equal measure.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's the first time I've ever been here. It's just so challenging. There's lots of different aspects to the track. The weather, as you can see, coming in now, so we don't know what it's going to do in the next 20 minutes, and we've got to decide and go out. So it's a great experience for a first-time racer like myself.
What can you do in terms of changing the setup of the car? Because yesterday was pretty windy, but it was dry and sunny today. It could rain, it might stay dry.
Well, it's going to be difficult. We sort of set it up in the middle just to see in the last 20 minutes how we're going to soften it up for the rain and put the wets on, or leave it fairly hard for dry. So I think everyone's just going to take a gamble and see what happens.
The Championship offers an incredibly eclectic grid, everything from standard production hatchbacks through to some pretty exotic machinery.
The basic idea of the Championship is to have as many cars out racing many different marques as possible, so we sort of cover all types of cars, saloon cars, sports cars, anything really that's got a roof can come and race with us. So we try and encourage as many people to come racing and enjoy racing as possible. Suddenly find that championships disappear, and all of a sudden we get an influx. Things like the Seats, the old Super Tourers come and race with us that you wouldn't see racing anywhere else.
In race 1, it was an invitation class car that took the victory, Paul Rose winning in his Seika sports car. Just behind, we enjoyed a terrific dice for second place between the Mitsubishi Evo of Gary Preble and the tiny Suzuki Cappuccino of Wayne Schofield. In the end, David beat Goliath, with Schofield finishing as the top championship competitor and setting a new lap record. The invitation class Pro Sport of Paul Spencer was 4th, this V8 Ford Falcon driven by Andy Robinson was 5th, and the Ford Escort Cosworth of Dave Cockle completed the top 6. 7th overall and winning Class B was Ilse Cox in a Seat Leon, and in the less modified version of the car, Nick Hayes finished 8th and was the winner of Class C, while the Honda Civic of Chris Boone took honours in Class E. Sadly, the Marcus Mantis of Doug Elwood suffered an early retirement, and with the race 1 results setting the grid for race 2, he'll have to start at the back, as will Robert Gilmore, whose Sapphire Cosworth also struggled in race 1. Somebody else starting at the back will be Ian Jordan after the number 77 Renault Clio suffered this crash. Hit by none other than his son, Andy Jordan, and ending up in the pit wall. Tim Wilden led the race in his Seika until a puncture put him out late on, so he should be one to watch, as should David Thomas, who starts at the back after being excluded from race 1 following a misunderstanding with the safety car. Sadly, there will be no Rex stamp on the grid for this one after a troubled weekend for the Lotus Elise. Here's a look at the top 10, and having won race 1, Paul Rose will start race 2 from pole in the Seika, with Wayne Schofield alongside in the Suzuki. It's Mitsubishi Evo and Pro Sport on row 2, with Ford Falcon and Ford Escort Cosworth on row 3. Okay, then the rolling start about to get underway. It's dry at the moment, but that rain is coming off the coast. Paul Rose on pole position leads them into turn 1, and he's got the lead. The Suzuki Cappuccino of Wayne Schofield is second, then it's Gary Preble in third. That pair had a right old squabble in race 1. Side by side again, and Gary Preble getting all out of shape, trying to go around the outside of the Suzuki Cappuccino, completely crossed up as we go on board with Gary. He keeps it on the road and stays in third place. Now gets onto the tail of Wayne Schofield, a bit more grunt up the inside at Church Corner he goes. And from Wayne Schofield's perspective, you can see Gary Preble charging through and into second place. The wipers are on, a little bit of rain in the air, and look, the Ford Falcon, the V8 supercar, thunders past as well. So Andy Robinson's gone third, looking back from Andy's car now at the Suzuki Cappuccino on the way into the Rocket Chicane. Then you've got the Escort Cosworth of Dave Cockle running just behind as well. Back on board with Wayne Schofield then. Into fourth place from second on the grid, but still leading Class D. He's trying to come back alongside now the Ford Falcon. A little bit lighter, more nimble through the twisty bits, and the Suzuki Cappuccino charges back through at the inside. And they're absolutely wheel to wheel now as they run down through the corkscrew, but Wayne Schofield around the outside and back into third place. Andy Robinson there in fourth. Fifth is Dave Cockle. Down to sixth place has gone the Blue Pro Sport of Paul Spencer. A race lead is about 2 seconds already at the end of lap number 1 for Paul Rose, who won race 1. But as an invitation class car, he's not viable for the Champion of Anglesey title. That looks like it's going to be fought out between either Gary Preble or Wayne Schofield based on their race 1 performances. There is Schofield, still ahead of Andy Robinson as they work through their banking this hairpin at the start of the lap for the second time. We go on board now with David Thomas in the number 45 Renault Clio, draws alongside Robert Gilmore, Sapphire Cosworth. Robert has to give second best on the way into turn 1, and David Thomas, who we look back from now, is charging up through the order in the Renault Clio. Now he's getting alongside the 71 Mark Szutzinski driven Nissan 370Z, gets past him on the way out of the banking. There is the race leader, Paul Rose, and he's off, isn't he? Look, he's got something like a 3-second lead now on this second lap of the race. Gary Preble, though, has been released, having had a difficult time through the first couple of corners to get past Wayne Schofield. On board with Gary now, though, and he's on a charge, working his way down in the number 96 Mitsubishi Evo through the corkscrew, this very twisty downhill section, and one of the favourite parts of the circuit for most drivers here as they just chuck it down off the edge of a mountain. Right, there is Ilse Cox, who won Class B yesterday. Behind her is the BMW of Andy Roby, which should go well in this race. And there's a good gaggle of cars there in various different classes, all tied together in the middle of the field. Looking back from Andy Robinson now in the number 6 Ford Falcon, and he's got the Pro Sport of Paul Spencer having a go at him on the way to the banking, and through goes the sports car. And look, just behind, Tim Wilden in the Seika, the number 43 car, the blue and white machine, which had the lead and almost won race 1 until a very late puncture put him out. He's coming from the back of the field, and he's already up into the top 10 as we go on board with Ilse Cox now. She's got Andy Roby's BMW breathing down her neck, and that's 2 cars in 2 different classes, but very evenly matched. Looking back now at Tim Wilden from Andy Robinson's V8 Ford Falcon. This is on the way into Rocket, and it looks like Tim has got around and into the position. So Tim Wilden now absolutely charging through. That puts him up to 5th place, back down to 6th position for the white Ford Falcon of Andy Robinson. There he goes, that car, a hugely powerful machine. Transported across from Australia a few years ago. It's his childhood dream to drive a car like that, Andy Robinson. It's not the best circuit for it because it's not that quick overall lap speeds here at Anglesey. There aren't some very long straights like you get at other circuits, so Andy can't really unleash the power. As we look back from Chris Boone's car at another very powerful machine, the Marcus Mantis of Doug Elwood, number 14. Barely did a lap in the race earlier in the weekend, but now he's charging through the pack, and it looks like Doug has got through at the corkscrew, and yes, he's got ahead of the number 88 Honda Civic of Chris Boone. There's Andy Roby in the BMW, still chasing down Ilse Cox. And these cars all running on the phrase of the top 10. Doug Elwood now go back on board with the Marcus Mantis, the number 14 car with a huge amount of power closing up to the tail of the BMW, but the heavier, faster cars here also struggle through the twistier sections at Anglesey. It is one of those circuits where it really does even things up between all the different types of car. You might have more power, and that's beneficial on some parts of the circuit, but you've usually got more weight, and it's harder to slow the cars down, as well as Doug Elwood now squeezes up through into Church Corner to get ahead of Andy Roby in the BMW. Now he's onto the tail of Ilse Cox. We are coming onto the part of the circuit where he should just be able to drive faster with more power available to him. And we look from Ilse Cox's car, and Marcus Mantis does get through, and Doug Elwood then picks up another place. Andy Roby, she's trying to defend from right behind her on the way into Rocket, so she concedes a place. And coming up as well, Derek Palmer, number 23. We didn't see him at all in the race earlier this weekend after dramas in qualifying, but the Nissan Primera is about to gain a place here. He's already got past the BMW, and now he gets past Ilse Cox in the Seat. He runs very wide though on the way through Peel Corner, but he'll be able to maintain the position. And so Derek Palmer is coming right up through the order from the very back of the field, and now Roby takes advantage, and he gets ahead of Ilse Cox as well. So Andy Roby pouncing there, while Ilse was a little bit delayed, put offline by the quicker cars coming through. But of course, he's in a different class anyway, so Ilse Cox hasn't lost a class place there. The BMW's in Class C, she's in Class B, and the car behind, Chris Boone, runs in Class E. Then we've got David Pearce in the Renault Clio, number 35, which runs in Class D. And looking back from his car, there's Chris Whiteley in the Class C Seat Leon. Chris in his first ever weekend at this circuit, getting to grips with things now, and very much onto the tail of the Pearce Clio. So there's a good little tussle going on here between 4 or 5 cars. But the two very quick machines, the Marcus Mantis and the Nissan Primera, charging through the field, and Chris Whiteley's having a go at the inside on the way into Church Court. That looks like he's got through, and that is a very slow-looking Robert Gilmore in the Sapphire Cosworth. That's had terrible dramas all weekend, and it looks like he's headed for the pits again, as Ilse Cox now gets past the BMW of Andy Roby, which looked like it had pulled to the side. Yes, everybody's coming past him, look. So Andy Roby has got a drama with that BMW, and I'm afraid it looks like he's heading for the pits as well. So 2 retirements, it looked like, within the space of about 10 seconds here. Ilse Cox gets a place back then. Chris Boone still on her tail, though, in the Honda Civic. And here is the number 43 Seika of Tim Weldon. Pretty much from the back of the grid, he's now up into 5th place and on the tail of the Pro Sport. There are the 2 retirees then into the pits. The BMW's gone straight to the paddock. The Sapphire Cosworth hoping to get back out again as the race leader Paul Rose makes his way through Peel Corner. Looking back now from the Renault Clio of Dave Pearce, who went very well and finished 3rd in class in the earlier race. And there's contact behind. That's Andy Jordan's white Renault Clio. And, well, was there contact, or was it just a spin from the VW Golf of Tony Absalon? Too far away to tell, but there certainly was problems for him, and there's problems for Tim Weldon as well. He gets very much out of shape at Peel Corner and almost throws the Seika off the road. And look how much time he's lost here to the Pro Sport of number 70, Paul Spencer. On board now with Wayne Schofield, who's just ahead of Paul Spencer as they come onto the start-finish straight. Really does whip the car along. It's a very lightweight car, the Suzuki Cappuccino. It's dominated its class this year and set the fastest ever lap around Anglesey for a Euro Saloons and sports car machine in race 1. There's Nick Hayes, number 37 in the Seat Leon, class winner in race 1. Coming onto his tail now, though, is Doug Elwood in this Marcus Mantis, and they're on their way into the first corner. Closing up a little bit under braking gear, just nipping the inside curbs, letting the car drift out wide. He's got the Nissan Primera of Derek Palmer on his tail as well. And now the Marcus Mantis of Doug Elwood looks to the inside, and actually I think Nick Hayes didn't fight that too hard. He knows these are 2 quicker cars in different class to him, and he's not going to be able to keep them behind for long anyway, so he sensibly, I think, lets them go. Here is the red and white Seat of Ilse Cox. Right behind her, though, is Chris Whiteley, and this is a battle just about for 8th place, and through they come now out of the banking. Chris Boone has just dropped back a little bit. Behind, the 2 Clios are getting closer and closer together. There's Tony Absalom. He went off the road, we saw, and he's got damage to the front right corner. The car is still running, but he's way out of contention now. Is this battle between Doug Elwood and Derek Palmer. Derek Palmer driving the Nissan Primera, which won the British Touring Car Championship in 1999, with Laurent i.a.w behind the wheel, and with Derek behind the wheel, it now picks up a place on the way into Peel Corner to get ahead of the Marcus Mantis. So terrific drive through the order this is becoming. Time for us now, though, to head for a break. Plenty more action to come, though, from Anglesey. We'll see you in a couple of minutes. Welcome back to Anglesey, the second race of the weekend here at the Arrow Pack Euro Saloon and Sports Car Championship meeting. That was the leader of the race, Paul Rose, but the leader in terms of championship positions is Gary Preble, because Paul Rose in an invitation class car, and you're on board with Wayne Schofield, who runs in 3rd place in the Suzuki Cappuccino. Gary and Wayne fighting it out to see who can be getting the best set of results and become the champion of Anglesey, lapping the Tony Absalom VW Golf, which went off the road earlier on. And there is the blue Pro Sport of Paul Spencer, which runs just about a 2.5 seconds behind in 4th place. In 5th place, that's number 43, Tim Weldon, who's come from nearly the back of the grid after a puncture in race 1. Also in the top 6, we've got Andy Robinson in the big V8 supercar, the Ford Falcon. But he's only about 2 seconds clear of Dave Cockle in the Ford Escort Cosworth, the silver machine there, which you can see closing the gap down. Dave Cockle really starting to put his hammer down now. Had a sluggish start to the first couple of laps of the race, but now he's really in a rhythm. Looking back from Dave Pearce in the Class D battle that he's got going on. He's in the blue Renault Clio. Behind him is last year's overall champion and Class D champion Andy Jordan. Here they come then. They're battling for second and third in class because Wayne Schofield Suzuki Cappuccino is leading the category at the moment, running in third place overall, and Andy Jordan with a bit more grip available to him, looking to get up the inside here on the exit to Peel Corner. He's on the outside line now as they work their way down through the corkscrew, right onto the tail though of Pearce, and coming out of the pits, that is Tim Weldon. So Tim Weldon has had a visit to the pits for some reason, and that has dropped him down the order. He was running in 5th place. I think that's probably going to put him out of the top 10 now. It's a fairly quick visit to the pits, but he's almost gone a lap down. Looking back from Dave Pearce's car as the race leader, number 21, Paul Rose, starts to lap the field now. Fairly short lap here at Anglesey, so the lappery advances fairly early in proceedings, and that allows Andy Jordan to just close the gap a little bit here in the number 1 Renault Clio. He's looking for the inside line on the way into Church Corner. He's committed to the move, gets his nose in there, but Dave Pearce keeps his foot in and bravely hangs on to the position here. Absolutely nose to tail, and 2 more Clios nose to tail. The older shaped Clio of number 77 Ian Jordan, repaired overnight, has now got his nose in front of Dave Thomas, but Dave is the one marching up through from the back of the field. A puff of smoke from Ian Jordan as he changes gear. They're on the way into Church Corner. We've got these Nissan 370Zs, 4 of them. That's number 73, Peter Pansera. We've also got Dan Mitchell from the USA, Mark Jasinski, the Russian driver, and Wolfgang Reip, the German driver. That's the lappery going on now with Wayne Schofield Suzuki. Just to go back to those Nissans, they are all drivers with no previous race experience prior to this year. They have all won a competition. They're all very good gamers and race cars on games consoles. They're now transferring those skills to become racing drivers, and ultimately they're going to be racing at the Dubai 24 Hours. So good training for them, this. Here's Paul Spencer in the Pro Sport. He's about to lap this battle between David Thomas and Ian Jordan. Gets past one of them. He'll get past the other through the second part of the chicane. David Thomas trying to get it closer and closer to the tail of Ian Jordan. Coming to the part of the course now where Ian Jordan got accidentally tapped by his son Andy Jordan and ended up in the pit wall. But they fixed the car overnight. The bodywork has been repaired, and Ian going pretty well here. Tony Absalom now about to lose another lap to the much more powerful Andy Robinson Ford Falcon. Tony went well in race 1, finished in the top 10, but went off the road on the exit to Church Corner and has not really been able to recover since. Andy responding now to the challenge that's coming from behind, the threat from Dave Cockle. Looking back from Andy Robinson, great shot this as he works his way onto the start-finish line. There's the Nissan Primera, which is up into the top 10 now. Number 23, Derek Palmer, getting past the number 74, Dan Mitchell-driven Nissan 370Z. Looking back from Dave Pearce now, still running second in Class D. Right on his tail though, number 1, Andy Jordan, who seems to be able to take the corners a little bit tighter. Seems to have a bit more grip available to him on the way into the banking, trying to find a way through. They're both lap one of the Nissans here. And Andy Jordan trying to slingshot past now on the run up towards Church Corner. Looking back from Dave Pearce's car, and Andy's disappeared from the shot, which means he's alongside and may have got through. There's the race leader. We cut to Paul Rose now. It's having a pretty serene time here. No challenges for him. Gary Preble running in second place. Still not that far behind Paul Rose. He's within 6 or 7 seconds of him and matching his lap times now. The wipers just coming on intermittently. 1 or 2 spots of rain in the air. There is Gary Preble. Hanging on to him as well, the Suzuki Cappuccino of Wayne Schofield going through. That's another of the Nissans now being lapped. That's Mark Szynski, and he's about to be lapped by the number 70 Pro Sport of Paul Spencer, doing a good job here of keeping out of the way the back marker and not getting into the battles with those ahead. 88 Chris Boone just working his way through. Chris Whiteley just ahead of him, and just ahead of both of them, Ilse Cox. There's the leader. There is Gary Preble, and the gap is starting to come down as the rain now starts to come down here. They're all on slick tyres, don't forget, so this is going to be an entertaining end to the race. It's just starting to spit with rain. Looking back from Dave Pearce, he's about to be lapped by the number 70 Pro Sport. Still think he's got Andy Jordan behind him, so managed to stay ahead in that little battle. Cars work their way over the start-finish line. Looking back from Andy Robinson, with all that horsepower, Andy's V8 Ford Falcon is not going to like the way wet conditions too much. There's Ian Jordan, number 77, has just been lapped by Andy Robinson, and Dave Thomas is now closer than ever to his tail. They're both about to be lapped by Tim Weldon. Tim coming up through the order now, and Tim is looking to get back up into the top 6. He's got ahead of Dave Cockle. His next target is to try and catch Andy Robinson, so the Saker handling beautifully in these conditions as Dave Thomas now draws alongside Ian Jordan on the run out of Church Corner. Behind them, they're both about to get lapped by Dave Cockle, who's on his own mission here to get up into the top 6. Flashes the lights, he goes around the outside, but Dave Thomas has moved up ahead of his class rival there, Ian Jordan, on the way into Rocket Corner. There's Dave Cockle. He's trying to catch Andy Robinson, so you got him and Tim Weldon both catching Andy Robinson's Ford Falcon to try and get themselves up into the top 5. Looking back from Dave Thomas now, and he has managed to stay ahead of Ian Jordan, so that will be for 4th in Class D. Ian just put offline there a little bit, I think, when the quicker cars came through to lap him. Looking now from the onboard of Ilse Cox in the Seat, which is still running very well here, just on the fringes of the top 10, still with Chris Whiteley on her tail. You can see the spots of rain falling on the camera lens now. Chris Boone's Honda Civic through next. Then this battle between Andy Jordan and Dave Pearce, and Andy is ahead now, so Andy Jordan has made it stick this time and is starting to pull away, pulling clear of Dave Pearce. There's number 37, Nick Hayes, in the top 10 and leading his class once again in Class C, having another solid drive. Now this is a replay. This is how Andy Jordan finally picked up the place to get ahead of Dave Pearce, and it was out of Peel Corner, running a little bit wide there as the rain came down and into the corkscrew. That's where the place change happened. There is the Marcus Mantis. That's another car with slick tyres on and a lot of horsepower that won't particularly like the sight of rain on the windscreen. Wayne Schofield now, and losing a place. This is for 3rd position, and the Pro Sport comes through. Paul Spencer gains a place if he can just hold it on the brakes on the way to Rocket, but he runs wide. And now the Suzuki Cappuccino comes back alongside him, but back up the inside comes Paul Spencer. They're absolutely wheel to wheel, coming towards us now at Peel Corner, but Paul Spencer's got the inside line, and through he goes. Great battle that, wheel to wheel through 3 corners, but Wayne Schofield eventually has to drop the position and drops down to 4th place. Gary Preble, meanwhile, is continuing to catch the race leader. There he is. He's closed the gap to just a few seconds now, but there's only a couple of laps to go. Looking back from Andy Robinson, he's been caught by the blue and white Saker of Tim Weldon, who is much, much quicker on the way down through the corkscrew, and already he goes for it. First chance he gets. Wheel to wheel they go, and Andy has to let him go, so Tim Weldon charges back up into 5th place. There is the Paul Spencer Pro Sport number 70 up into 3rd place now. Still hanging on to him though is Wayne Schofield. The Suzuki Cappuccino coming onto its least favourite part of the circuit, the straight, but the rain might just help him out a bit here, although Paul Spencer's car is handling beautifully in these conditions. There's the leader. You can see the lights of Gary Preble not that far behind him because he is charging on, whereas Paul Rose has eased up a little bit too much perhaps in the closing stages of this race. But I don't think he's going to quite have enough time. Gary Preble in the 4-wheel drive Mitsubishi Evo, revelling in these conditions. Looking back now from Andy Robinson, who might be about to lose another place here because Dave Cockle has caught him up. This is the battle for 6th place. Andy Robinson runs wide. Dave Cockle right on his tail now as they come out through Rocket. Just behind them you can see that the Seat of Ilse Cox is still just ahead of Chris Whiteley, but Dave Cockle trying to muscle his way past. Can't do it yet. Onto the final lap of the race. This is Gary Preble working his way through the banking. Definitely much, much quicker now as the rain gets heavier, and he can see the race leader. He puts a lap on the Sapphire Cosworth of Rob Gilmore, which has gone back out now. He's got 3/4 of a lap to catch the race leader, and he's going to be very close to catching Paul Rose at this rate. A lot knots. Look how much quicker he is here. All the way up the hill into the braking zone for Rocket, and there's the race leader just ahead. He's got the gap down to just about a second now as they work their way through Rocket. Half a lap to go. Can he possibly nick the victory here at the end of the race? They're both coming up to lap the Nissan. Paul Rose gets up the inside into Peel Corner. That could be crucial because he won't lose any time. Running down through the corkscrew now, Gary Preble agonisingly can see the race leader, but there's only 2 corners to go. There's Paul Rose. He's backed off at the end of this race, but I think he's just about going to hold on to it. Yes, he is. There's the checkered flag, but Gary Preble is the top championship scorer and the most successful driver here. He's effectively going to be the champion of Anglesey. There's Paul Spencer and Wayne Schofield nose to tail, 3rd and 4th across the line. Nick Hayes, there he is. He's going to win his class for the 2nd time this weekend, and just behind him that's Tim Weldon's Saker, which is going to come through to finish in 5th place after another adventurous race. And Nick Hayes comes through, he's going to finish in 10th place overall. Great drive by him. Checkered flag comes out. Tim Weldon He's almost a lap clear. He takes 5th place. Looking back now, who's going to finish in 6th? Andy Robinson on board with him in the Ford Falcon, working his way through the corkscrew. Dave Cockle, he's trying absolutely everything to try and find a gap, find a way through in the Silver Escort Cosworth, but he's not going to do it. The flag comes out. They're another pair that go nose to tail over the finish line. Looking back now from Dave Thomas, because there is Derek Palmer, who is going to come through to lap him, and Derek, with a sterling effort in the Nissan Primera, is going to finish this race from the back of the grid in 8th place. Fantastic race then. Paul Rose, Gary Preble and Paul Spencer the top 3. Wayne Schofield, Tim Wild and Andy Robinson round out the top 6. Dave Cockle, Derek Palmer, Doug Elwood and Nick Hayes complete the top 10. So many congratulations then to Gary Preble, 1st and 2nd of the championship scorers in the 2 races. He's the champion of Anglesey.
Right up to half an hour before the race, we had to make a decision because it's not a 2-minute job to change mine from wet settings to dry. So we went for the slick option, and yeah, it paid off really. We had a pretty good start. Chased the Sakers for the first sort of cut of laps, and slowly lost ground to them. I developed a bit of a misfire, which was rather frustrating. And towards the end of the race, the sort of drizzle came in, and Paul in the Saker backed off quite heavily, and I was pulling him in. We looked at the telemetry afterwards, pulling him in about 3 seconds a lap. And we only finished 1 seconds behind him, so it could have made it a couple more laps. Would have been an interesting race for sure.
So well done Gary Preble and everybody at the Arrow Park Euro Saloons and Sports Car Championship for some fantastic racing.